Korean won, or 52 million US dollars. This is one of several cases recently uncovered by South Korea's customs service involving Chinese companies mislabeling products as made in Korea and exporting them to the US. According to KCS data, the total value of illegal exports in the first quarter of 2025 reached 29.5 billion Korean won, about 20.8 million US dollars, with 97% of these goods destined for the US. In comparison, the total illegal exports in 2024 amounted to 34.8 billion Korean won, with 62% of the goods being exported to the US. This indicates a significant increase in Chinese goods being routed through South Korea to bypass US trade restrictions. One of the reported violations involved battery cathode materials worth 3.3 billion Korean won. These materials were imported from China, labeled as made in Korea, and re-exported to the US to avoid the high tariffs imposed by the Trump administration.
Yes, and this is how, well, China got around us the first time. This is how they got us the first time. We thought we were going to have fair trade with China, but they said no. They kind of went behind our backs and transported their products to either Mexico, Vietnam, or, well, South Korea. And they would go as far as switching the labels on them, the made in label, to kind of subvert these tariffs. This was a problem. This is why, well, things didn't work out for Trump the last time, because he didn't foresee the loophole that China took. And he didn't foresee other countries allowing China to honestly break trading laws, because you're not allowed to do that. It is illegal, but break trading laws for China so these guys can get a buck off it too. Yeah, we didn't expect that part. Well, Trump didn't expect that part, but guess what? He did now. And you want to know how we know? Because he tariffed the entire world, even the inhabited islands.
Another case, reported in March 2025, involved surveillance camera parts worth 19.3 billion Korean won. These parts were imported from China, lightly assembled in South Korea, and then exported to the US to bypass restrictions on Chinese telecommunications equipment. This practice, known as origin laundering, refers to the act of falsifying or altering the country of origin labels on goods to evade tariffs, bans, or other trade restrictions. Common methods include simple processing in a third country, changing packaging, or relabeling to exploit loopholes in trade regulations. Lee Kwang-woo, a planning official at South Korea's Customs Service, noted that during Trump's first term, the trend of fake exports had already emerged, and with his return to office, this issue is likely to intensify. He revealed that South Korean authorities began investigating these practices after Trump's re-election to prevent any escalation of violations. On April 21st, South Korean and U.S. customs officials held a meeting to discuss enhanced joint enforcement measures to address cross-border origin laundering issues. Additionally, South Korea's customs service also seized a shipment of advanced semiconductor products worth approximately 5.1 billion Korean won, around 3.6 million US dollars. These products were imported by South Koreans, misrepresented as low-end semiconductors valued at only 1% of their actual price, and illegally exported to Hong Kong. South Korean authorities have pointed out that some foreign companies are attempting to exploit South Korea's free trade agreements by using the country as a transit point to avoid US tariffs or bans. In response, South Korea's customs service announced the establishment of a special trade security investigation team to focus on cracking down on re-export trade practices that exploit tariff differences between countries, aiming to protect South Korea's global trade reputation. It's worth noting that this action by South Korea comes ahead of high-level US-South Korea talks regarding Trump's tariff issues, signaling South Korea's intent to clarify its position to the US and secure favorable treatment in the ongoing tariff negotiations. South Korea is just one of the countries taking tangible actions to distance itself from China and clearly aligned with.
I mean, Vietnam has distanced itself from China. They put sanctions on China. So shout out Vietnam. They didn't really chose their side. Japan didn't chose their side because China tried to come out with the fake propaganda news that, oh, they're having talk with Japan. Japan prime minister comes out quick as hell. It's like, nope, we ain't talking with China. South Korea, they ain't messing with us either. So it kind of sounds like every Chinese country or Asian country is kind of looking at China like, yeah, dog, I'm sorry, but you're effing up here. You're effing up trying to mess with America, because we're going to go work with them. We're going to leave you on that island by yourself. And that's exactly what's happening. That's why she's trying to go to all these places, trying to see if he can work out a favorable deal. But the problem with Xi is that he has nothing to offer them. He has no buying power to offer these other countries because they don't have any buying power. That's the problem of him going around trying to deal with these guys because they're going like, well, look, bro, unless you could replace the buying power of the US, sorry, it ain't, we can't do nothing for you. And that's the loss that China's at.
Was the US. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping's recent charm diplomacy tour of Southeast Asia has been followed by a series of unfavorable events for China. There has been a subtle shift in attitudes towards China, not only in traditionally China-friendly countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, and Cambodia, but also in nations like India that have maintained a non-aligned stance. This change suggests a potential collective pushback against the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. Interestingly, the first
My
major
life is like, how are we going to place 1.4 billion people? I'm like, surprise, surprise, everybody. Out of that 1.4 billion people, only 700 million actually has purchasing power. Yes, out of 1.4 million people, bro, only 700 million have like, well, seven. I mean, what about that? 1.4 billion people, only 700 million has purchasing power. That's nothing. That is nothing compared to what we're rocking with. Okay, I mean, bro, out of I would say 350 million Americans, I would say probably maybe like 50 to 60% of us have some type of purchasing power. I mean, bro, we even got kids in America who got more purchasing power than adults in freaking China who have full-blown educations. I mean, shoot, if you paying your kid, or let's say your kid is somehow making $400 a month, they're making more than a nurse is in China. Understand that part, okay? So first, let's understand like the difference between our economy and theirs. And let's also understand the difference of our currency. See, they can try to go into another country, but that conversion rate is not going to hit as hard. I mean, for every $1 is 7 Chinese yuan. Like the only better conversion they got is with the European Union. And let's be real, their buying power is nowhere near ours. Still, even with a better currency, still. And if you want to go with third place, which might be the yen, our conversion rate is still better than them. And what they're going to do, business with Mexico and get paid in pesos? Like I said, they need us. They not just our buying power, but our currency.
major criticism of Xi Jinping came from Singapore, a country long viewed as pro-China. On April 21st, Ho Ching, wife of former Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, shared an article from the local media outlet Critical Spectator on Facebook. The article boldly stated China would hold more sway in the world today if Xi Jinping hasn't been a mobster for the past 12 years. The article criticized Xi
Yeah, because y'all have been able to build your consumer market and y'all have had more of a stance against US. I mean, if you guys continue with these same practices, but I'm pretty sure if you'd have got this guy up out of here, then we'd probably have been had fair trade and we wouldn't even need to do all this with you guys.
Xi's 12-year rule, comparing him to a mafia boss who has acted aggressively in the South China Sea, violated international laws, militarized islands, and harassed other countries' vessels, while still promoting the idea of resisting
I ain't gonna lie, that is an asshole move. We're just gonna spray you with a hose, like the whole ship. Like that is a bit of an asshole move, but funny all the same. I'm not gonna lie.
bullying. The article went further to point out that the CCP has banned foreign companies from operating in China. Illegally subsidized industries, stolen intellectual property, violated commitments
Illegally subsidized industries. I mean, this is what the whole argument I had with the Biden, with the CHIPS Acts. Is that we was making it a legally government subsidized industry, and that's what we were going to do with the CHIPS Acts. They was going to monopolize the global, well, the domestic market, and they'd have become oligarchs on their own. We created a whole new oligarch class with just the computer chips, and it made no damn sense. Like I said, I mean, shouldn't we kind of just leave it up to competition and not give these guys government funding? Like, isn't that a bit like commie like, China giving government funding to their favorite companies? And let's be real, the CHIPS Act wasn't giving money to all these chips companies, just our favorite ones.
commitments to market openness and set up non-tariff
It's
trade
like,
barriers while criticizing trade protectionism. It also condemned Xi's Belt and Road Initiative for creating debt traps and dumping goods on Southeast Asian countries. The article concluded that despite global dissatisfaction with Trump, Xi Jinping is not a suitable alternative. Once the Trump administration reaches agreements with various countries, the US will gain trust for honoring its commitments, while China will not. Xi Jinping will struggle to rally
yeah.
global support in opposing the US. The tone of the article, which openly
And bro, they've never done fair trade. These guys have never had a fair trade with us. They have always found a way to subvert us, always found a way to play us and like water down our products or try to find a way to get products in here for the low without paying any tariffs. This is why we're playing hardball with China, because they abuse everybody. They don't follow no trade laws, none of them. Well, I wouldn't say none of them, but the most important ones they don't follow so they can make the biggest buck. Like that is a problem, and the world knows it. If you don't think that some of these countries are coming to us because it's also F China, you are sadly mistaken.
He supports the US and criticizes the CCP and Xi Jinping personally was shocking. Ho Ching's decision to share the article and leave it up for more than 10 hours without deleting it shows that it was not an accidental move. As the wife of Singapore's former prime minister, Ho Ching's actions have deep geopolitical significance. Although Lee Hsien Loong stepped down in 2024, his influence remains. The new prime minister, Lawrence Wong, was Lee's chief private secretary and was chosen as his successor in 2022, showing the continued influence of the Lee family on Singapore's politics. By acting independently, Ho Ching has left the current government room to maneuver on its diplomacy with China, while indirectly signaling Singapore's willingness to lean closer to the US. Singapore, once considered the most pro-China country in Southeast Asia, still has substantial economic ties with China. Ho Ching previously served as CEO of Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, Temasek, which had investments in China amounting to 19% of its total portfolio, worth over 2 trillion yuan. Despite this deep economic connection, Ho Ching's public endorsement of an article criticizing Xi Jinping indicates that Singapore is no longer intimidated by China's potential retaliation.
Shooting I mean, word around town, and like I said, this isn't fact based, but and like I said, this only comes from what I've been hearing going on. That the CCP is kind of going through a power shift right now because they don't believe that Xi is able to handle this situation correctly, because everybody's kind of judging him for putting tariffs on America, which is funny as hell because I'm like, bro, what do we get from you guys? I mean, like, dog. I mean, like, bro, what do we buy from you for real? Like, we buy stuff, but like, let's be real. We buy into your economy way more than you buy into ours. So you putting tariffs on us isn't really doing anything, honestly, since we overly buy from you. Now, if you were the guys buying from us in large amounts, then okay, yeah, them tariffs would have hurt. Those would have hurt us. But since you guys are the one that is pretty much making everything or buying everything, the tariffs hurt you guys the most. And I mean, look, I know the liberal media like to paint tariffs as a sales tax on the people or a price increase on the people, but no, actually, it's not. And it's all because of this thing we like to call competition. Competition in the market keeps most of these companies from raising their price because they can lose their position in the market. Usually the tariff is eaten by the supplier or the producer, in this case, which would be China. So some company in China is either going to lose that business to a different producer or supplier. Is either that's the case, or they find a way to make it easier on the importer and be like, look, don't switch business with us. I'll find a way to make it easy with you with this 400 or this 145% tariff. Just let me cut some overhead. Let me cut some employees so I ain't got to pay too much people. And I'm going to sell you this at a cheaper price so we can keep that business. Yes, it gets pushed down the supply line. That's why, and I'm going to be real with you, that's why a lot of people kind of fearmonger the way they do about it. Because really, it's kind of like y'all Chinese like spies. Like you're not even like accurately explaining what a tariff is and how it affects China. Like y'all not accurately doing that. Because to sit there and say that tariffs is just a tax on the people is really dishonest. Like, let's be honest. Let's be real here. That's not what a tariff is, just period, point blank.
Additionally, on April 7th, Ho Ching wrote a lengthy article criticizing China for failing to meet its obligations after joining the WTO while benefiting from enormous economic gains. She also praised the US for leading global free and fair trade. Current affairs commentator Tang Jingyuan pointed out that while the earlier article seemed to test political wins, the decision to share such a sharp criticism of Xi Jinping on April 21st was likely a carefully considered official statement. Ho Ching's actions may reflect Singapore's understanding of internal shifts within the CCP and its awareness of Xi Jinping's weakening power, suggesting that Singapore no longer fears repercussions from China. It is worth noting that there are reports indicating that since the beginning of the US-China tariff war, China has been seeking a middleman for negotiations with the US. Among those considered were former Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and the leaders of Japan and Germany. This shows that China once viewed Singapore as a trusted partner, but now, with Ho Ching publicly attacking Xi Jinping as a mafia boss, Singapore is signaling a shift toward the US in its geopolitical positioning. In
Exactly.
ASEAN countries, this attitude is not an isolated case. On April
Because nobody trusts China to do business. I mean, everybody understands that in the world, but I mean, citizens in the United States. I know, right? Like, man, the main people who should understand it don't understand anything. It's tough. I mean, when people try to say we're the most uninformed people in the world, I mean, man, I hate it. I hate when they say it, but they are not wrong. They are not wrong, guys. I promise you, they are speaking facts.
21st, Reuters reported that Malaysia Airlines Group, MAG, is negotiating with Boeing to take over Boeing 737 MAX planes that were returned by Chinese airlines due to the US-China trade war. MAG CEO Isam Ismail stated that acquiring new planes early will accelerate their fleet renewal plan and shorten delivery waiting times. MAG plans to have 55 new 737 MAX aircraft by 2030.
Like I said, if you didn't hear me in my argument, I said market Pacific. Most prices won't raise because a lot of these guys cannot afford to raise their prices. Like I said, if you're going to sit there and miss the same element that the left or the liberal media or mainstream media missed, which was competition, like they forgot all about the fact that these markets are in competitions or each of these companies are in competition within a certain market. And if one company can find a way to not raise their price and still make their profit by passing it down to the producer or finding a different way to get it manufactured, then everybody else is going to have to find a way too. So, yes, when I say it depends on the market, like the clothing market will not see any price increase. You know why? Because there are other producers other than China. Like we can go to Bangladesh, Indonesia, or Mexico. 3 other places we can go to get that. So why would these companies raise their prices if they can sit there and avoid the tariff right there and then with 3 other locations? All that's going to happen is that there's going to be some poor clothing company in China that's got to close down because they lost business. Like, is that not ringing any to you? Like, come on now. And like I said, you're missing the element of competition in the market. Like these Dems explain it as if there's only one competition in the market and they can just set the price wherever they want. You know what that's called? A monopoly. We don't got too much of that in here. I mean, we got a couple of them like Facebook and Google, but that's Meta and Google, but maybe Amazon, arguably. But that's it.
And has already ordered 18 737 MAX 8s and 12 737 MAX 10s, with an additional 30 aircraft option. This move is not just a commercial decision by Malaysia Airlines, but also has significant geopolitical implications. The Chinese government's order to stop accepting Boeing aircraft on April 15th, even at the cost of losing large deposits, is intended to retaliate against the US. What was meant to pressure Boeing in the Trump administration has inadvertently created opportunities for countries like Malaysia. Malaysia's action not only alleviates Boeing's inventory pressure, but also sends a friendly signal to the US, undermining China's perceived strategy. At the same time, this move is seen as Malaysia's attempt to reduce its trade surplus with the US and strengthen its relationship with Washington. According to Malaysia's official statistics, Malaysia had a trade surplus of about $25 billion with the US in 2024, and this order is expected to help balance bilateral trade. India is also eyeing this opportunity. On April 21st, Bloomberg reported that India's national carrier, Air India, is planning to take over Boeing 737 MAX planes returned by China to meet the rapidly growing market demand. As of March 2025, Air India had already received 41 aircraft originally intended for China, but were not delivered due to the 2019 737 MAX grounding. Even more striking, Russia had proposed freezing funds to purchase these aircrafts, though the plan was not realized due to operational difficulties.
I mean, man, that's just one thing. All these, no, so funny. I'm thinking, what China stopped buying Boeing airplanes, and you know what happened? All the countries that we put on a waiting list for these Boeing airplanes come and ate those mugs up. I mean, we're not really taking too much of a hit here, guys. I'll tell you that right now. It's not that much of a hit. It's kind of like, it's pretty hard to affect our economy. I'll tell you that right now. Like there are some guys or some small businesses who's feeling the heat. Like I'll even tell you this. The lady who is this one lady who pretty much imports what was it? Rubber baby bids. Yeah, rubber baby bibs. Rubber. I know, right? But she imports those in and she was crying, pretty much saying that, yeah, I over leveraged my house to pay for this, and now the tariff came in. It's about $8,000. I don't got it. I mean, yeah, that is kind of how tariffs work. That's how tariffs work. It affects the supplier or any importer on both sides. But guess what? 9 times out of 10, and I'm be honest with you, the prices does not raise due to competition. Because let's be real, there's other plastic baby bids or rubber baby bids that weren't ordered from China that the other company got somewhere else, and their prices staying just the same. I mean, like I said, you guys are forgetting the main element in economics. So it's kind of crazy how people are trying to tell me that I don't know economics, but you have left out the element of, competition, which is probably what makes economics so unpredictable is, human nature, human flaws, and competition in the market. If you guys can't address that, I mean, who are y'all to tell me about economics? To be quite honest with you, if you can't address one of the main things that make economics, economics, what makes our free market a free market, competition. So if you can't sit there and say that, oh well, yeah, I can see how competition in the market does keep people from raising their prices, which I mean, even in economics, they'll tell you that. But for some reason, you've all ignored that for, oh, tariffs are bad and they're a price increase on the people. And that's what you've been set to believe. And I'm sorry that you're not willing to listen to, somebody else's perspective. Or trust me, I could show you an economist that says this flat out, says it flat out. But you still wouldn't listen to it. Even the examples I'm giving you with the clothing, you couldn't even refute it, but you will still sit there and not listen. I don't know what to tell people who don't understand economics.
This proposal highlights the growing rift in the
Like,
relationship between
at least admit it. Like, come on now. I'm not an asshole. I'm not gonna sit there and be like y'all and be, how could you not know this? I'm not like the lib. I'm not like y'all. I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna treat you with respect and be like, bro, if you just tell me you don't understand, shit, we can break it down. But if you want to sit here and be condescending while talking like you know something, dog, hey, I got mods in the chat that'll make it look like an idiot.
Russia and China, reflecting Russia's disregard for China's sentiments. In contrast, China's refusal to accept Boeing aircraft not only results in lost deposits, but also disrupts the import of aircraft parts, negatively affecting China's C929 large aircraft project and putting the safety and maintenance of its Boeing fleet at risk. Meanwhile, Boeing has benefited from the returned planes, with Malaysia and India quickly purchasing the planes without any inventory pressure. China's move to halt Boeing deliveries is
What I tell you, I mean, hey, yo, China, we found our another country with 1 billion people and with a whole lot more buying power. Where's your leveraging now? Where's that leverage now? You had a whole lot of people with no buying power, and we found a country with a whole lot of people with buying power. Yeah, I mean, way more buying power than y'all.
in the
India ain't perfect. India ain't perfect by a long shot, but it's way better than China.
end a perfect example of shooting oneself in the foot, a counterproductive and foolish decision. In the context of the US China trade war, India's role has become particularly crucial. On April 21st, US Vice President Vance, accompanied by his Indian American wife and family, visited India to meet with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, focusing on economic, trade, and geopolitical cooperation. This visit is seen as a key move to deepen the US-India alliance and counter China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific region. After the talks, Modi publicly declared that India would firmly stand with the US in the trade war, joining forces to counter China. In addition, to mark Vance's visit, India announced a 12% temporary tariff on imported steel, effective for 200 days, to curb the surge of cheap steel imports. While not explicitly targeting China, this move clearly addresses China's dumping practices and aligns with President Trump's push to limit cheap Chinese products. Given the long-standing tension in India-China relations due to border conflicts, it is not surprising that India is aligning with the US in the trade war. However, what is more striking is Cambodia, a country often seen as a loyal ally of the CCP, making a surprising move. signaling a shift in their stance. On April 22nd, the Cambodia-China Times reported that the president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Cambodia, AmCham, Casey Barnett, stated that the Cambodian government is amending laws to control and prevent other countries from using Cambodia as a transshipment hub for goods to the US. Led by Cambodia's Deputy Prime Minister Sun Chancel, the Cambodia-US Bilateral Relations Coordination Working Group held the first round of trade talks with US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer via video conference on April 16th. Was Cambodia seeking to reassure the US about its commitment to avoid imposing high tariffs on Cambodian goods? Previously, on April 18th, as part of his Southeast Asia tour, CCP Secretary General Xi Jinping visited Cambodia. However, just after Xi left, two Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force vessels docked at the...
And all right, last video on China, and then we're going to go ahead and get into social hour. It's going to be a fun one, guys. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to go ahead and knock it out all the way until at least 6. All right, let's go. Shout out to, what was this? China Uncensored, I believe. All right, let's go. Somebody with a bit more of an entertaining voice, I'll tell you that.
Xi Jinping is in a life or death power struggle. Is he more on the death side of things now? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Just a reminder, leave a like and a honeypot emoji in the comments below. So, it seems, in all likelihood, He Weidong, one of China's top generals, has been purged. And if we're talking about purges and clandestine power struggles at the highest ranks of the Chinese Communist Party, you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the people's favorite communist soap opera, General Hostility. Previously on General Hostility. After more than a decade in power, Xi Jinping has purged millions of Chinese communist officials in his so-called anti-corruption campaign. But anti-corruption is just a front for Xi's true intentions, trying to take over the world. Okay, it's actually purging disloyal officials to solidify his power over the CCP. And then trying to take over the world. But in the face of a trade war with America and a fraying economy at home, are Xi's days numbered? I love that show. So yes, since Xi Jinping came to power in 2012, he's purged a lot of people, particularly in the military. This is pretty typical in communist China. It happens every 10 to 15 years. In 1959, Mao Zedong purged Marshal Peng Dehuai, China's defense minister at the time. Why? Because Peng resisted Mao's cult of personality. He obviously lost that power struggle. That sparked a huge round of purges in the military. Fast forward to the 1970s. Mao's chosen successor, Marshal Lin Biao, allegedly tried to assassinate Mao. And so Mao began another massive purge of top officials in the military. When Deng Xiaoping led the CCP, a failed Chinese invasion of Vietnam led to another round of purges. When Jiang Zemin came to power in the 90s, boom, more military purges. You get the idea. Purging the military is just what CCP leaders do. It's on their list, along with genociding a religion and or ethnic minority of their choice and trying to take over the world. When Xi Jinping became the leader of the CCP, he was in a massive power struggle with a political faction tied to former CCP leader and current pickled toad, Jiang Zemin. So, of course, he purged all the military officials promoted under Jiang. Well, almost all of the military officials. Xi purged General Guo Boxiong, who was in charge of military development, and General Xu Sai-ho, who was the political commissar. They had been in charge for a long time, so almost every top Chinese military official had been promoted by them. Xi's purge was devastating. He completely reorganized the People's Liberation Army command structure, and all the top positions were now filled with people Xi personally promoted for their loyalty to him. And that's what's so weird about this recent round of purges. Xi is getting rid of people like He Weidong, who are widely believed to be Xi Jinping allies. He Weidong was big. He got what's called in Chinese politics a helicopter ride. Xi promoted him several ranks at once right to the top. In 2019, he was put in charge of China's Eastern Command.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure bro is kind of looking at him like, hey, yo, you put tariffs on America, but America barely buys into us. So what was the point of that? I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, bro, I'm pretty sure people in his party is looking at him like, bro, just capitulate. Like, just go to America, sign whatever deal they need to, and we just cut the bullshit. It's not like we're going to stop making money. Like, what is this all about? I'm pretty sure there's people who have that exact mindset in there.
In other words, the guys who would be invading Taiwan. Then, 2 years ago, He was promoted to be number 3 in China's Central Military Commission. That's the group that controls the military. The number 1 position is obviously Xi Jinping, but the number 2 position is Zhang Youxia, the only survivor of the purges of General Guo Boxiong and General Xu Saiho. So if you were placing bets on who Xi would purge, you'd think Zhang Youxia, who was promoted by the generals appointed by Xi Jinping's archenemy, would be way more likely. So why was it He Weidong? Well, since this is the opaque world of inter-communist party politics, there are several explanations floating around. According to Miles Yu, who's the director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute, when Xi collapsed all the different departments of the PLA during his big reorganization I mentioned earlier, this created a lot of overlap, redundancies. So with generals Zhang Youxia and He Weidong, they have overlapping core competencies. That's why you got enormous internal struggle and fight against each other for favor. So it's basically a turf war, and that's why Xi Jinping had to sacrifice one of them. Of course, that doesn't really explain why it was He Weidong that got purged and not Zhang Youxia. So here's another explanation. It has to do with this guy, Miao Hua. Miao was another member of the Central Military Commission and Xi Jinping's main propaganda guy for the military. So, a major Xi ally in the military. And he got purged. That was a few months ago. Sino Insider, a risk consultancy that specializes in elite Chinese politics, suggests his purge could have been similar to Chairman Mao's purge of Lin Biao, a close ally that may have become too ambitious for the great helmsman. In the process of advancing Xi's political objectives, Miao could have inadvertently cultivated his own power base, or was perceived by Xi as having cultivated a power base that could threaten his interests. Life as a CCP official sounds stressful. If you don't get enough power, you get purged. If you get too much power, you also get purged. If you even look like you might be getting too much power, you still get purged. So if you're about to get purged, what can you do to save yourself? Rat.
Man, somebody need to give them the 48 laws of power. And I think it was the first chapter of Don't Outshine the Master, my friend. Because, then the master comes after your ass out of insecurity of you gaining more favor. And now your ass is in the gulags. I know, right? 48 laws of power. First one.
Other people out. According to Yuan Hongbing, an Australia-based Chinese dissident, Miao Hua, in order to save his own skin, made sweeping accusations of disloyalty. How sweeping? He accused around 1,300 people at all ranks of the Chinese military of disloyalty, including people above him like He Weidong. But then there's yet another explanation floating around out there. Xi Jinping is out of power, as in totally out of power. And General Zhang Youxia, the number 2 guy in the Central Military Commission, is really in charge. That's why Xi allies are being purged, because now there's a new guy at the top. As the guy basically in charge of China's military, Zhang would have a ton of power. And Xi has certainly made himself a lot of enemies over the years. And with the Chinese economy struggling, young people unable to find work, and a growing trade war with the United States, maybe enough people within the Chinese Communist Party have had enough. And there certainly have been coup attempts against Xi before. But there are some problems with this. Rumors of a successful coup against Xi have obviously not always panned out. And looking at Chinese state-run media, you don't get a sense that Xi is going anywhere. Instead, you see Xi Jinping thought on culture leads path to national rejuvenation. And senior official calls for thoroughly studying, implementing Xi Jinping thought on culture. Officials at all levels, particularly in the military, are still being told to study Xi's writings and speeches.
Huh.
Typically in Chinese communist power struggles, before one faction topples another, they create a narrative around it to sway public opinion. If Xi really were out of power, you wouldn't expect his propaganda to be so prominent. The real test of Xi's power will come in 2027 at the 21st Party Congress, and whether or not he gets elected to another 5 years as China's supreme leader. But don't worry, there's plenty of general hostility to watch before then. In fact, there are signs